Good evening, namaste, hello. How many other languages can we do? Aloha, adab. Um, Welcome to all of you, to our distinguished panelists and guests, to our distinguished scholars in the audience from all over the Western world, from as far as Japan, from all over India, to our most distinguished reciter, Pujya Shri Morari Bapu. Namaste to all of you. Welcome. Uh, it is again my honor to be here to welcome you. Some of you, having heard me yesterday, may be wondering, why is this fellow stepping up to the microphone again? I apologize, and I just want to say, according to Indian theatrical theory in the Natya Shastra, no performance is complete without the Vidushaka, the clowns. So I'm here to get things started. Um, we are beginning a unique set of events. For the next 7 evenings, we will be hearing distinguished speakers, a group of them from India later in the week, and in the first 3 days, we will hear scholars who have spent their lives in the Western Academy, studying the Ramayana, studying South Asian and Indian literatures, studying poetics, history, and all the subjects around it. Uh, we have people who have worked on the Sanskrit Ramayana, on the Ramayana in Southeast Asia, on Persian or Farsi, Hindi. Um, it's a wide variety of scholars, and I'm very delighted to be able to welcome all of them, including some who are on stage. Uh, each of the evenings will be led by one of our distinguished faculty colleagues from Harvard, and I'll introduce you Charlie in 1 minute. And I want to say to all of you who are here, this is a kind of thing that doesn't happen. What excited us about this is that you have two communities of expertise. People who live in the Ramayana and know it extraordinarily well, they live it, and people who study it with all the tools of modern philology, historiography, literary theory, etc. So it's a rare chance to bring two groups who are concerned about the same things together in a conversation. I see that maybe there isn't a translation, so if some of you will forgive me, in my unpracticed Hindi, I'll just give a short, brief description in Hindi. माफ़ कीजिएगा क्योंकि मैंने देखा कि सबके पास भाषांतर करने का यंत्र नहीं है और भाषांतर मेरा होता है और नहीं मुझे मालूम नहीं, तो एक छोटा सा संक्षिप्त सार मैं देता हूँ कि आज से हम एक सप्ताह के लिए हर शाम कुछ अनोखा कार्यक्रम प्रारंभ करते हैं। हर शाम कोई विशेष विद्वान, कोई प्रसिद्ध लोग आपको कुछ प्रवचन देने वाले हैं, और इन पहली 3 शाम में पश्चिमी देशों के विद्वान जो आधुनिक यूनिवर्सिटी में काम करते हैं और रामायण, भारतीय साहित्य पर संशोधन करते हैं, वो अपना काम, अपना विचार और आपकी दृष्टि पेश करने वाले हैं। और हर शाम हमारा एक कॉलीग, माफ़ कीजिएगा कॉलीग के लिए क्या कहते हैं हिंदी में नहीं मालूम, हमारा एक कॉलीग संचालक बनेंगे, तो उनका भी मैं अभी अभिप्राय कर दूंगा। बस मैं इतना कहना चाहता हूँ कि आपका सब स्वागत है इस सुंदर कुटीर में, जो एक विद्या की कुटीर है, और हमें बहुत आनंद है कि आप लोग यहाँ हैं। नमस्ते। एंड Charlie has included a few words about his own work in his opening, but I want to say that he's a very old friend and a very distinguished scholar of both Buddhism and also of the literatures of India, Sri Lanka, and South Asia. Charlie Hallisey.
पूज्य बापू को प्रार्थना है सभी हमारे मेहमान को सूत्रमाला और शॉल अर्पण करके उनका स्वागत करें।
Professor Diana Eck, Professor of South Asian Studies and Religion at Harvard. Professor Sally Sutherland, she's a distinguished scholar of the Ramayana, one of the co-translators of the Sanskrit Valmiki Ramayana. Professor Madoka Fukuoka, who has come to us from Japan. She's a very distinguished scholar of the Ramayana in Southeast Asia, and Professor Nilma Shukla Bhatt, who is also a very old friend and a distinguished scholar of South Asia. Professor Charlie Hallisey.
My name is Charles Hallisey, and I am a senior lecturer on Buddhist literatures at Harvard Divinity School. It is my honor to be the facilitator for this session tonight. This session tonight of presentations by leading contemporary scholars of the Ramayana, the first of 3 nights of scholarly presentations, in conjunction with this very special Ram Khatau. As I am sure many of you know, in classical Sanskrit drama, a facilitator got the performance started by telling the audience about what lay ahead for them. He reminded them that they were a worthy audience, that the actors in the play were excellent, and the play they were about to see was truly worth seeing. I feel that it is my good fortune tonight to be in a similar position as facilitator of this session. That you have chosen to be here tonight in Sanders Theater is evidence in itself that you are indeed a worthy audience. Our 4 presenters and 1 respondent are excellent, internationally respected for their scholarship on the Ramayana. And the scholarly presentations that we are about to hear from them are, without a doubt, truly worth hearing. And we will end our time together with an excellent musical close. Since we have quite a lot on offer already, our program tonight will only be the presentations and the musical close. There will be no questions and answers addressed to the presenters or any discussion between them. But there will be certainly a lot for us to take away. The order of the speakers is first Professor Diana Eck, then Professor Sally Sutherland Goldman, then Professor Madoka Fukuoka, and finally Professor Nilma Shukla Bhatt, with a response from Hitesh. The musical performers are Shaija and Nirja. I will introduce each speaker just prior to their presentations. So first, please join me in welcoming our first presenter, Diana Eck, Professor. She is Professor of Comparative Religion and Indian Studies Emerita, the Frederick Wortham Research Professor of Law and Psychology in Society, and the Faculty Director of the Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute, all at Harvard, on whose faculty she has been for 50 years. Diana Eck is a remarkable scholar whose academic work focuses on both India and America. She is also a remarkable teacher, as I can personally attest, as I count myself among her students. Her work on India focuses on popular religion, especially regarding temples and places of pilgrimage. Her work on the United States explores the challenges of religious pluralism in its multi-religious society. Diana Eck is a recipient of numerous awards for her academic work, and she served as president of the American Academy of Religion from 2005 to 2006. So please, Diana Eck.
Hitesh, did you run off with my notes? I think Hitesh took my notes. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. The part of the university in which I teach is called the humanities, and these are the study of things that make us human. You can imagine what they are. Religion, my field, is certainly one, and art and music and literature, and certainly great literature like the Ramayana. So there, in the very introduction to the Ramayana, Valmiki, and here I'm speaking about Valmiki's Ramayana, asks the sage Narada, is there a man in the world today who is truly virtuous? Who is there who is mighty and yet knows both what is right and how to act upon it? Who always speaks the truth and holds firmly to vows? And of course, this is Rama, and the exploration of virtue is totally in keeping with his character. And we know, as Hitesh reminded us yesterday, that the Ramayana tells in its opening the very story of its composition. As the sage Valmiki is bathing in a river pool, he saw a pair of sweet-voiced water birds sporting together. As he watched, a hunter shot one of the birds, and seeing that bird writhing on the ground, his mate cried out piteously. And hearing the wailing of the female, Valmiki uttered a condemnation. And what he spoke was in verse, in metrical rhythm. And his verse form, uttered out of grief or shoka, would be called shloka, which is the meter not only of the Ramayana, but of much of Indian literature. So grief and love, these are the topics that I want to explore in this very short presentation. Grief is a form of love. They're not just connected, they actually are one and the same. Where there is deep grief, there is deep love. And most of you can attest to that joining of grief and love. The connection between grief and separated lovers, even birds, and the themes of the Ramayana is not incidental. To begin with, it prefigures the fateful separation of King Dasharatha from his son Rama. On the joyful eve of Rama's coronation as successor to Dasharatha, one of the king's wives, Kaikeyi, reminds the king of a boon he had once given her, to choose anything she wished. And now she chooses that her own son, Padata, will become king and Rama will be sent into exile in the forest for 14 years. The palace and the city of Ayodhya are turned upside down with the turbulence of this turn of events. Bharata, for his part, is out of town, ignorant of what has happened, and Rama insists on being true, as we know he would, to his father's promise. Rather than ascend to the throne, he leaves unquestioning for 14 years in the forest, the Vanavas. And with him goes his wife, the faithful Sita, daughter of King Janaka, and with him also goes his brother Lakshmana, somewhat impetuous but loyal. In the background is the story, another story of love and grief. As prince, when he was a prince, Dasharatha was famous for his marksmanship. He could shoot with dead certain aim without even seeing its target, just hearing it. He was out hunting, he heard the blub blub of an elephant drinking by the riverside. He shot his arrow, and when he approached, he found it was a boy filling a great big water pot. As the boy lay dying, he told Dasharatha that he was the sole protector of his aged and blind parents, who were waiting a short distance away. In shock, Dasharatha took the boy to his parents, and when the boy died in front of them, they were overcome with grief and expressed their desire to join him on the cremation pyre. And before they did, they told Dasharatha that he too would eventually die of grief in separation from his beloved son. And so it was. Many years later, that's just what happened. The moment Dasharatha could neither see the dust of Rama's party leaving Ayodhya, nor hear the sound of his horse's hoofs, he collapsed in grief, described as a lotus torn up by the root, or a fish flailing out of water. Separated from his beloved Rama, his eldest son and heir, Dasharatha dies. The brothers also suffer grief of separation. Bharata is called back to Ayodhya and is shocked to find out what has happened. He insists on finding Rama in the forest to persuade him to return to the throne. And he gathers a great big party of people from the palace and finds Rama at the forest hermitage of Chitrakoot. Their love for one another is strong. They embrace, but he is unable to change Rama's resolve. As Rama puts it, the first betrayal of Dharma may be easy, or it may be hard, but after the first betrayal, then the others soon follow. Since we have come together, he says to Bharata, our separation is for sure. And while we are together as two men in this lifetime, let us keep the truth. So Bharata returns to Ayodhya and installs Rama's sandals on the throne. And then he himself retires to Nandigram and becomes an ascetic to await Rama's return. Most poignant, however, of course, is the separation of husband and wife, as Sita is abducted from the Panchavati forest by the demon king Ravana, and the rest of the epic is driven by the quest for Sita. Rama and Lakshmana are beside themselves, desperate, when they are forced to suspend their search in Pompa during the rainy season. Rama is filled with the intense longing of lovers, for the rainy season is the season of love. The moon burns him. The soft shoots of the forest floor stab him. And Sita is longing too. Imprisoned in Lanka, in an Ashoka grove, she is thin and wasted, her hair knotted upon her head, her eyes downcast, described as a lotus where the water of the lotus pool has dried up. She conceals her face with a blade of grass when Ravana comes to threaten her. And she fears that she is sinking in a sea of separation. Has Rama forgotten her? So Hanuman gives her Rama's ring to assure her of the depth of his love. Now, of course, winning back Sita from Ravana on that island's stronghold of Lanka requires a very long battle, actually quite a tedious battle, and the unlikely alliance of this army of monkeys and bears. But eventually, Rama defeats Ravana. But rather than receive her with open arms, Rama has Sita undergo a test of fire to prove her faithfulness. Or, of course, well, the fire will not burn her, but we know, as Tulsi tells it, that the real Sita was protected by the fire all along. Rama returns to Ayodhya with Lakshmana and Sita. It is joyous. The city of Ayodhya is described beautifully. But even then, the source of his sorrow does not abate. The gossip of the citizens about Sita's long captivity in the house of Ravana leads that Dharma-conscious Rama to send Sita away. We can scarcely believe it. Send her away to a hermitage in the forest. And Lakshmana's heart breaks when he takes her to the forest and leaves her there. She says she would herself die, but she is pregnant then with Rama's child. Eventually, she has two sons, Kusha and Lava. They grow up knowing the legend of Rama from their mother and singing the story of Rama across India, until one day they come to the court of Rama and sing out the story. In the end, Sita returns to the earth whence she came, and Rama enters into heaven, walking into the waters of the Saryu River. Now, no summation of this story can do justice to the multiple ways in which the emotional heart of the Ramayana has been told and sung and enacted. But what remains clear is the fact that the Ramayana and the Ramcharitmanas explore some of the deepest human emotions, the intertwining of love and separation and grief. And that is for us a lesson for today. Thank you very much.
Please join me in welcoming Professor Sally Sutherland Goldman, one of the foremost Sanskrit scholars of our time. Professor Goldman received her PhD in Sanskrit from the University of California, Berkeley, where she taught for more than 40 years and was honored with Berkeley's Distinguished Teaching Award. She is internationally recognized for her leadership in the landmark Valmiki Ramayana translation project, which has helped make one of India's foundational epics accessible to scholars and readers around the world. Her research has significantly advanced the study of Sanskrit literature, South Asian intellectual traditions, and gender in South Asian history. Again, please join me in welcoming Professor Sally Sutherland Goldman.
Good evening. We'll see if my technology works. Okay, good. First, I would like to express my thanks to the organizers of this affair. It's a wonderful event, and I'm so pleased to have been invited. We're going to move this evening a little bit to more of an analysis of Valmiki Ramayana. It's something many of you may not have be familiar with. My focus is on the ancient Sanskrit epics, specifically Valmiki's Ramayana. I identify it here today as Valmiki's Ramayana, since there are many Ramayanas, and the Ramakatha is arguably one of the most popular and influential stories in the world, and has been told and retold in many languages, in different lands, and in various periods. The vastness and the diversity of the tradition, both within the Indian subcontinent and beyond, has well been studied and documented by such scholars as V. Raghavan, Ramanujan, and Paula Richman, who's sitting in our audience tonight. The vast majority of these later versions derive, we believe, either directly or indirectly from the monumental Sanskrit epic poem of the first millennium BCE, attributed to the legendary seer and the Adi Kavi, the first poet, that is, Valmiki. Although largely unrecognized, and I might note too here in our audience, Philip has mentioned it, the tradition of the retellings of the Ramakatha can be said to begin within the confines of the Valmiki Ramayana itself. Today I will look to how the Adi Kavi employs re-narration, or what I call narrative recursivity, of his poem as a central structural and organizing technique within the monumental poem. In the epic context, narrative repetitions and variations have not gone unnoticed, although focused scholarship on the topic is scant. That such repetitions, retellings, and recurrences populate the Mahabharata in a number of different forms was noticed by Ramanujan in his repetitions in the Mahabharata, where he notes that a central structuring principle of the epic is a certain kind of repetition. More recently, Vishwa Adluri has expanded on the centrality of the narrative repetition of the Mahabharata, arguing the important point here is to see how repetition in the epic is never gratuitous, but always made to reinforce a message or with subtle shifts of emphasis that nonetheless can have major effects. It can be argued that Valmiki's Ramayana shares many of the narrative structures that Ramanujan identifies as so central to the Mahabharata, and that its numerous repetitions, along with variations within those repetitions, are never gratuitous, but rather are meaningful, intentional, and fundamental to the Katha, both structurally and narrative. However, just a second here. Within these structuring principles, there is one crucial difference. For unlike its sister epic, the Ramayana is completely entranced with its own narrative, constantly repeating and retelling its own Katha in full or part. In what follows, I will argue that Valmiki's almost obsessive retelling of his main narrative is not an unfortunate lapse on the poet's part, or the later reciter's part, or reminder of a forgetful audience, but rather that must be understood as fundamental and meaningful to the structural organization of the poet itself. Recurrence, or recursive narrative used generically, can be understood to overlap with the term repetition. As we examine these seemingly redundant retellings, which often are subtly at variance with previously narrated events in the epic story, we must keep in mind that the repetition is not arbitrary, but methodical and significant. Despite working on film, Jonathan Auerbach, in his Chasing Film Narrative, Repetition, Recursion, and the Body in Early Cinema, offers, I feel, powerful insights in the use and the function of such recursion as a literary device in Valmiki's epic. As Auerbach notes, even in its redundancy, the action accrues meaning, or larger patterns of order, by slight variation as well as repetition. Variation allows the viewer to establish relations between prior and present action. Otherwise, the story would have no particular climax. Such variations, in other words, entails a central issue of causality, which enables a story to turn into a plot by suggesting to its viewers not just how, but why and where. Since too much change might risk the loss of continuity, a curious tension emerges between repetition and difference. Specifically, I'm adopting and adapting for the purposes of the following discussion Auerbach's definition of recursion as a regressive return triggered by the process of transition. Auerbach's conceptualization of repeated actions while based in a film theory is useful to our understanding of the many of these numerous reiterations throughout Valmiki's epics. While the openings of both epics provide multiple retellings of their respective kathas, Valmiki's Ramayana never lets its audience forget. Thus, as part of the poem's prologue, or Upudgata, the Rama Katha is first related in a non-poetic historical account given by the sage Narada to Valmiki at Sarga 1 of the Balakanda. And then in a terse index-like listing of the events at Sarga 3. Between these two events, we have the creation of poetry by Valmiki, who is moved through his grief, shoka, to create the poetic verse of shloka. Brahma then tells Valmiki to compose the history of Rama. These are all taken from the Mewar Ramayana that's online from the British Museum, all the slides. Valmiki then teaches two young bards to recite it, and they repeat the tale throughout the lands. Sarga 5 begins the actual Rama Katha. This is told to Rama by the two young boys, a tale that will only conclude at the final stages of the Uttarakanda. Valmiki's Ramayana has additional 3, or depending on how we count them, 4 retellings of the entire epic near its end. These more or less complete retellings primarily tell of Rama's exile, victory over the Rakshasas, and the return to Ayodhya. The first found in the Yuddhakanda is unique among all the full retellings in that it tells the story in reverse as Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana, along with their monkey companions and the Rakshasa Vibhishana, make their way through the skies. Rama points out to Sita where important epic events occurred, and in do so tells the entire story, starting with the events in Lanka, and finally ending up at Bharadwaja's ashram, from which they can see Ayodhya, the very place from which their Vanavasa began. Next, as Rama arrives at Bharadwaja's ashram on his return to Ayodhya, the sage informs Rama that he already knows what happens, and in doing so repeats the important events of the narrative. Closely following upon this, at Yuddhakanda 114, Hanuman repeats Rama's adventures in exile to Bharata. The epic framed by retellings is, in fact, a retelling of itself. Additionally, buried in the epic are countless partial retellings of the narrative from a variety of epic participants at different times and at different locations from multiple points of view. The narrative is often told and retold in sequential episodes by multiple characters, slightly modifying each subsequent version, adding to and re-emphasizing character-specific aspects of the katha. For example, a series of stories related from the very conclusion of the 3rd book, the Aranyakanda, through the opening book of the 4th book, the Kichkindakanda, reveals multiple retellings of the closely or identical aspects of the katha. Thus, here we go, right? At the end of the Aranyakanda, the audience is made aware of the trials of Sugriva, the younger brother of Valan, the king of the Vanaras, as the Rakshasa Kabanda relates them to Rama in some detail. Rama then tells Lakshmana what Kabanda had related to him about Sugriva's trials and tribulations. Then at the opening of the Kishkindakanda, after the description of Pampa, Hanuman, sent by Sugriva, introduces himself to Rama and Lakshmana at Pampa and tells them of Sugriva's troubles. Then Rama has Lakshmana tell Hanuman his own history and trials. Hanuman once again tells Rama and Lakshmana of Sugriva's woes, returning to Sugriva's lair with the two princes. Hanuman, one, yes. Hanuman now tells Sugriva about Rama's troubles, the ones he had heard from Lakshmana. This constitutes Hanuman's first retelling of the Ramakatha. Sugriva now tells Rama what Hanuman had just told him in a slightly condensed version. And finally, but not least, Sugriva retells all the events, providing more detail based on personal observation, including here the abduction of Sita and the dropping of her jewels. Each of these two distinct but parallel narrative trends covers similar temporal ranges while simultaneously reintroducing and reinterpreting and representing the narrative. And these are just slides of what I just told you about being illustrated. Collectively, they draw the audience back to the earlier epic events, stall the forward motion of the narrative, and simultaneously mark an anticipated transitional point in the narrative. A similar type of narrative sequence occurs at the end of the Kishkindakanda, framing the events of the Vanara in the Vanara capital. A second common way that repetition of the narrative is carried out through the character, mainly Hanuman, but not exclusively. We think of Sita and Shurpanakha, who tell the same story repeatedly to different characters with variations at different points in the epics. For example, Hanuman, in addition to replaying the epic events in his own thoughts as he searches for Sita, retells versions of the Ramakatha to Sugriva, Swayamprabha, Surasa himself, Sita, Ravana, the Vanaras, Rama, and Bharata. This is a topic I'm currently working on. Another type of reiterative narrative, this is Hanuman telling Swayamprabha, the Ramakatha. Another type of reiterative narrative seen throughout the epic is the retelling of a singular important secondary event, a sub-narrative or a counter-narrative, as it were, repeatedly narrated through the epic by multiple characters. Thus, we see the ubiquitous retellings of the slaying of Kara and Dushana by Rama, first told in the Aranyakanda, a narrative sequence I've worked on extensively. This is a version from a Persian manuscript. The structure and length of these internal retellings vary. For example, some are linear, some are temporally reversed, some split the retelling into parallel events, but temporally overlapping narratives. Some are fairly brief, while others occupy multiple sargas. What they hold in common throughout the epic is that with the exception of the stories that frame the main narrative, they almost all exclusively, quite logically and not unexpectedly, re-narrate partial segments of the Khatha. The fifth book of the epic, the Sundarakanda, is the emotional, poetic, and narrative center of the epic. In this book, the poet takes great pains to show slow the tempo of the story, painting elaborate, detailed descriptions of the very long flight of Hanuman to Lanka, the citadel of Lanka itself, the detailed descriptions of its fortifications, the inhabitants, the fear-inducing descriptions of the hideous Rakshasi wardresses of the heroine, and the haunting and emotionally wrought descriptions of Sita. In so doing so, he offers the audience full panoply of the rasas, creating a poetic masterpiece from which the Kanda earns its obscure name, which is translated often, or the Sundarakanda, translated often as the beautiful book. Perhaps more than any other book, the Sundarakanda uses narrative repetition to meditate an absent hero and the present heroine and their sorrows. This is done largely through the voices of Hanuman and Sita. Re-narration, albeit of different lengths, occurs throughout the Kanda and are designed to interrupt the forward motion of the narrative, displacing it both temporally and spatially. I would briefly like to examine two sargas, one in which Hanuman is the speaker and one in which, again, we hear Sita, which employ what might be termed as a recursive style to a reimagined past as well as the future epic events. These sargas are framed by numerous additional reiterations of the past events. I argue in my longer paper that they are significant. The central location and unique structure of these two sargas speak to an intentionality of design by Valmiki and reflect a fundamental organizing feature of the epic itself. Thus, at Sarga 11, 69 shlokas long, Hanuman, in deep despair and unable to find Sita despite his extensive search of Lanka and Ravana's palace, bemoans at great length what failure will mean and contemplates suicide. In some 57 shlokas, the Vanara hero provides a dark, depressing, and catastrophic re-envisioning of the epic narrative. Hanuman first reminds us of his fruitless search of Ravana's fortress to find Sita. Hanuman's thoughts now take a dark turn as he imagines the princess's dreadful fate at the hands of Ravana. In a downward spiraling catalogue of disasters, he envisions potential fate that might have befallen the princess as Ravana carried her off through the sky. Hanuman's conjecture, focusing on a worst-case scenario, begin with the unimaginable. Perhaps Sita may have given in to Ravana in her helplessness. He then traces back potential disasters. She might have fallen when first abducted. Her heart might have stopped when she saw the dreadful ocean. Or that Ravana may have crushed her in his powerful arms and thighs during her abduction. Or perhaps she fell into the ocean or was eaten by Ravana and his wives. As he does so, Hanuman echoes Sita's cries of her abduction, Ha Rama, Lakshmaneti, Ha Ayodhya. Rama, Alakshmana, Ayodhya. Even as the passage paints a dark and despairing picture of Sita's fate, it echoes the events of her abduction. Hanuman, overwhelmed with despondency in his mission's failure, continues brooding. If I return to Kagasta, Rama, and tell him the most unwelcome news that I have not found Sita, then he, Rama, surely will die. Upon seeing Rama in such state, the Lord of the leaping monkeys, Sugriva, filled with gratitude and having honorably formed a compact with him, will give up his life. Then poor Ruma, depressed, hysterical, dejected, and joyless, will give up her life, tormented by grief for her Lord. And Tara, too, already drawn with grief and tormented by her grief for Balan, will never survive the death of the king. Here, Valmiki has masterfully drawn upon the standard of the popular Sanskrit trope of the vilapa, or the lament. In this lugubrious revisioning of the fate of both the Ikshvaku's lineage and that of their Vanara allies, the poets remind his audience of the deadly consequences of failure as he reiterates, select the key moments of the figures of the story. The poet has not just stalled the forward trajectory of the narrative, but has momentarily reversed it. But crucially and uniquely here, simultaneously he projects a depressing and apocalyptic future. Note too that Hanuman's words clearly articulate hierarchical status, marking royal, familial, gender, and species relationships. Even as Valmiki ends the sarga by reminding us of Hanuman's devotion to Rama and others, he takes pains to emphasize repeatedly the depths of Hanuman's despair. Hanuman's mournful recollections of key epic moments onto which our projected catastrophic future have stalled the narrative, and as I've argued elsewhere, mark incipient transition. That such a poet's intention comes in two sargas later and marked with his discovery of Sita. With her discovery by Hanuman, Sita moves from the epic's margins to its center, both narratively and structurally. That is, Valmiki locates the heroine in the center of the Rakshasa kingdom, pauses the narration, and paints a heart-rendering, poetic, and lengthy distinctions, many of which reflect a golden, lost past, focusing solely on her, and places the passage in what is emotional and arguably the physical heart of the epic. The next 8 sargas, reinforce this as the narrative transitioning from Hanuman's despairing reiterations of the past and imaginings of calamity once again return to the main narrative. It is here that Ravana approaches Sita and woos her. And Sita rejects Rakshasa, the overlord, and in do so he glorifies Rama. Ravana threatens to chop Sita up and eat her for breakfast and departs, displaying once again his mastery of Valmiki displays once again his mastery of the Bhayanaka, or the terror of Rasa, repeatedly, as Valmiki repeatedly describes the Rakshasi wardresses' intensified threats to the hapless princess. It is in this context that Valmiki anticipates the upcoming meeting of the two principal figures of the Kanda, but not before giving space from which the audience can experience both descriptively and vocally the suffering of the epic's heroine. In what can be understood to be one of the lowest points of the epic, the poet now gives full voice to the captured Sita, as she laments her miserable and seemingly hopeless state and questions why her beloved husband has not yet rescued her. Of specific focus here is the heart of Sita's morbid reflections, Sarga 24, which consists of some 49 shlokas and occurs right before the dream of Trijata and the description of the auspicious omens, presaging Hanuman's arrival. Once again, drawing upon the convention of the Vilapa, Valmiki has Sita reiterate key epic events as she experienced them, framing them into self-blaming conjectures as to why Ravana hasn't come. Her haunting reflections of the past are entwined with her self-blaming, decrying her fate, and praiseworthy praise and devotion of Rama. So she says, or thinks, therefore I think it must have been exhaustion, my good fortune, that has made this virtuous man so pitiless. For why has he not single-handedly annihilated 14,000 Rakshasas in Janastha, not come for me? Why then has Rama, who slew the battle of that bull among Rakshasas, Virada, and the Dandaka force, not come for me? Granted, it is difficult to assault Lanka, which is situated in the middle of the ocean. Still, there's nothing but in the world that can stop the flight of Raghava's arrows. For the king of the vultures, who knew I had been abducted and might have so informed Raghava, was slain in battle by Ravana. It was a great deed that Jatayu performed in trying to rescue me, despite his advanced age in single combat with Ravana. Each of these events of the Aranyakanda call to mind episodes in which Sita is a central figure. Yet the events in Janastana, her abduction by Ravana and Jatayu's unsuccessful efforts to save her. Yet again, Valmiki has momentarily paused the narrative's forward motion. But Sita's thoughts now make a shift from the dreadful past to an imagined future. But rather than prophesizing the demise of the Ikshvakus and the Vanaras, her thoughts turn to the destruction of Ravana and the Rakshasas. Indeed, as soon the city of Lanka will resemble a cremation ground filled with flocks of vultures, its roads thick with the smoke of funeral pyres. For it is certain that once the evil lord of the Rakshasas, Ravana, is slain, his unassailable citadel of Lanka will wither away like a young widow. Once its lord is killed, the city of Lanka, so rich in holy festivals, together with its Rakshasas, will resemble a beautiful woman whose husband has died. Very soon now I shall hear the sound of the weeping Rakshasa maidens, afflicted with grief in every house. It is only heroic Rama, the corner of his eyes, blood red, should learn that I am living in the house of Ravana. The citadel of Lanka would be consumed by his arrows, plunged into darkness, its splendor destroyed, its bull among Rakshasa slaughters. Sita's imaginations are prophetic. Her fantasies foretell what will happen in the Yuddhakanda. Combined, her past and future's misgiving highlights more or less the major episodes of the narrative, much as Hanuman's did mark incipient narrative transition. For it is following this that Hanuman will reveal himself to Sita in the Ashokavana. These two lengthy sargas located in the emotional narrative and arguably physical heart of the epic and Kanda, before the discovery of Sita and before Hanuman meets with Sita respectively, paint similar, if limited, pictures of past, but contrasting visions of the epic's future. Structurally, they differ in that the former works to tell both future and past simultaneously, while the latter does so sequentially. yet both bring the forward motion of the narrative to a standstill and mark imminent transition. Hanuman observes the arrival of Hanuman wooing and threats to Sita, and the Rakshasis taunting, while Sita's the arrival of Hanuman and his message, giving her hope of rescue. I would argue these two sagas represent additional mechanism through which Valmiki incorporates recursivity into his masterpiece, and that Valmiki uses these specific retellings of his narratives as major organizational principle to mark the center of his epic. Hopefully, this brief paper has demonstrated how Valmiki employment of narrative recursion or repetition is carefully, intentionally, and extensively employed throughout the Khanda, and I argue through the book of the epic. These moments, as Auerbach has notes, are triggered by, and I would suggest intentionally anticipate, the process of transition. And I end by reminding my audience here of Valmiki's famous words, Yavat stasiti giraya saritascha mahitale, tavat ramayana katha lokeshu pracharishate.
Our next speaker is Professor Madoka Fukuoka, Professor of Cultural Anthropology at Osaka University and one of Japan's leading scholars of Southeast Asian performance cultures. Trained in music, anthropology, and cultural studies, she has devoted her career to understanding how performance traditions shape identity, culture, and social change across Southeast Asia. Her scholarship is particularly noted for its exploration of Indonesian dance, wayang theater, gender expression, and contemporary interpretations of the Ramayana and Mahabharata traditions in Southeast Asia. Please join me in welcoming Professor Madoka Fukuoka.
Thank you for the introduction. I will read prepared manuscript. Maybe it is not my slide.
Charlie, I'm sorry to interrupt. They're having a little technical trouble. They're asking if we can switch to Nilima and they will fix it by then. Is that all right? I'm very sorry, everyone. Some technical trouble, so we're going to do Nilima Shukla Bhatt's talk first. While they sort out Professor Madoka, I apologize to you. I apologize to the audience. I'll let you introduce Nilima. मैंने कहा था कि ये एक प्रयोग है दो भाषाएं का, एक आधुनिक विद्या और एक पारंपरिक विद्या, मगर तीसरी भाषा हम बीच में हमेशा ही होती है जो टेक्नोलॉजी.
You're going to respond, so still
Yes.
here.
Yes. Okay.
So I was going to introduce our next speaker, Professor Nilma Shukla Bhatt, as our final speaker, but I will ad-lib. And so Professor Nilma Shukla Bhatt is Professor Emerita of Religious Studies at Wellesley College. She is a distinguished scholar of Hindu traditions, devotional literature, and Gandhian thought. Professor Shukla Bhatt is well known internationally for her explorations of how religion is expressed through poetry, music, storytelling, dance, and social action. Her work has brought new attention to Hindu devotional movements, women's religious experiences, and the cultural dimensions of Gandhi's philosophy. There will be a response to Professor Shukla Bhatt's presentation by Hitesh, the Executive Director of the Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute at Harvard. His own academic interests include classical Indian aesthetic philosophy, classical and modern literature and architecture in India, and modern politics in South Asia. Please join me in welcoming Professor Nilma Shukla Bhatt.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to begin by thanking Sri Morari Bapu for sharing with us his deeply insightful interpretations of the Ramcharitmanas that highlight truth, love, and compassion as pillars of a meaningful life. I want to thank the organizers of the Ramkatha event for their invitation to present and their warm hospitality. And I would also like to thank Harvard's community of scholars who have helped shape the academic component of this Ramkatha, highlighting that bhakti and the search for knowledge and truth are not separable. They are inseparable. And that it is happening at Sanders Theatre is especially fortunate because it is here that I also heard soulful Sufi songs by Nasrat Fateh Ali Khan and Abida Parveen, and have often heard the Christmas carols during December. So I'm very happy to share this space with all of you. But before I turn to my presentation proper, I would like to quickly complete a task that has been long overdue. And that is, and this comes in because in yesterday's lecture, Morari Bapu and Hitesh Bhai both mentioned songs of Narsimha Mehta. Rupayatan, the Junagadh-based institution generously supported by Sri Morari Bapu, and the venue of the Narsimha Mehta Award in Gujarati literature, initiated by him, has given me an invitation to their guest house and to translate into Gujarati my book, Narsi Mehta of Gujarat, A Legacy of Bhakti in Songs and Stories, which was published by Oxford University Press in 2004. I am greatly honored and very happy to share with Shri Morari Bapu and Hitesh Bhai their love for Narsi. Thank you so much. Now let me turn to my presentation, which is titled The Ramayana in the Cultural Landscape of Gujarat, with a focus on popular Sita-related songs. I will base it on three broad, interrelated ideas that help us understand the Ramayana as a living text in Gujarat. The first is about religious language and narratives. In his well-known book, The Philosophy of Religious Language, Dan Stiver proposes that religious language, and especially religious stories, narratives, in any tradition are powerful precisely because they are imprecise. Their lack of one fixed meaning or one form provides space for people to create new meanings every time they are told again. And Dr. Sutherland just showed us that even within the narrative itself, there are repetition and multiple narration of the same story. The nature of religious narratives is metaphoric. The term Sanketik, used by Morari Bapu yesterday, nicely captures this idea. As we know, the two great Indian epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, have hundreds of retellings in and beyond India. The volumes of essays edited by Paula Richman and Nell Hawley and Sohini Pillai, the many Ramayanas and the many Mahabharatas, give us a glimpse into the spread and the rich diversity of their interpretations. The second idea that I want to use relates to performance. In an essay on Scottish folk songs, ballads, and tales, Janet Sorensen points out that the performances of culturally important stories stir the collective memory of a community and affirm its identity. They link the past, the present, and the future of the community and give it a cultural continuity. At the same time, performances allow people agency to draw new meanings from the stories that reflect their own hopes, values, and self-perceptions. Performances based on religious narratives like the Ramayana have double power, that of religious language as discussed by Stiver, and of performance as discussed by Sorensen. In discussing the Ramayana as a living text in Gujarat, in addition to the power of religious language and performance, I would like to point to a third dimension, and that is of layered integration. As is well known, of the hundreds of retellings of the epics, some are literary works, some are oral narration, and some are art or performance-based. These circulate among different layers of the society, the elite and the commoners, men and women, urban, rural, and tribal. Their circulation also has a variety of contexts: academic discussions, kathas by kathakars, and songs sung during festivals, life cycle rituals, and daily routines. Now, the Ramayana and Mahabharata are extremely large with hundreds of stories. Not all of these find place in songs and oral narration, but some popular themes and episodes keep recurring in songs and tales in multiple layers of a society. The layers tie them together, even when interpretations differ. I suggest that along with the multiplicity of retellings and performances, it is this thick layering of popular themes that makes religious narratives like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Srimad Bhagavat living texts in various regions. With these few points, let us now turn to layering of the Ramayana in the cultural landscape of Gujarat. As in many regions of India, the elite layer of the Ramayana in Gujarat is formed by literary works of well-known poets. The first well-known poet to give Ram-related lyrics was Bhalan of the 16th century. Many of his poems focus on Ram's childhood and are known for their lyricism. In the early 19th century, a full-length epic was composed by Pushtimargi Vaishnava poet Giridhar. The epic, though known much beyond literary circles of Gujarat, demands scholarly attention for its musical style and creative interpretations of some components. Bhalan and Giridhar's works established the Ramayana firmly in the literary history of Gujarat. At the other end of the spectrum are the oral narratives of Adivasis or tribal communities who present the Ramayana themes in a different light. Then there are popular forms of Ramayana that contribute to the epic's vibrant life in the region. One of them, in the recent decades, has of course been Morari Bapu's Kathas that have integrated a Hindi epic seamlessly into this landscape. Yet another widely popular form is based in songs. Some of these are bhajans and deeply devotional, and some are not necessarily devotional. They are songs for festivals, weddings, and daily routines through which people express their aspirations, ideals, and self-perceptions. Many are related to Sita and minor characters like Kevat and Shabri. While these express aspirations and self-perceptions of women and people on the margins of the society, they also have an irresistible draw for powerful people. Let us now look at some examples of such layering. One is related to Ravana. In Giridhar's literary epic, there is a long section on the early life of Ravana, whose devotion is awarded graciously but somewhat hurriedly by Shiva. Ravana is awarded with a lot of things, and with his power, he creates an illusion of 10 heads to stir fear and becomes a terrifying figure. And so Vishnu had to descend on earth. So this is very different from actual 10 heads. And in the oral Ramayana of Kunka Bhils of the Dang area, on the other hand, presents Ravana's 10 heads not as a reward for his dedication to Shiva, but for a power to terrify others, or a power to terrify others, but as a punishment from Shiva for a grave mistake. the 10 heads consistently cause Ravana trouble during hunting, while the Kunka Ravana differs radically from Girdhar's. The two stories intersect in their focus on Ravana's devotion to Shiva and linking two layers of narration. Another is related to the popular story of Kevat, the boatman, who refuses to take Ram across Ganga. Kevat fears or pretends to fear that his lifeless boat would turn into a woman, just as a lifeless stone became Ahalya when touched by Ram's feet. There are popular songs on this episode in several languages. In Gujarati, in a lyric by poet Bhalan, Ram is accompanied by sage Vishwamitra when Kevat makes his plea. The sage finds a solution to this dilemma and asks Kevat to wash Ram's feet. Ram compassionately obliges. Here, the poem begins in Kevat's voice. However, attention is sharply drawn to Vishwamitra's wisdom and Ram's compassion in the end. A very popular song by a celebrated 20th century folk poet, Dula Kag, Prabhu mane shak padyo man mai, pag mane dhoa done ragurai. This song, on the other hand, is almost entirely in the voice of Kevat. The boatman clearly says that he has doubts in his mind and nearly demands that he is allowed to wash Ram's feet. The wit of this uneducated man is greatly appreciated by Sita. The Dulakak song offers to the singer and the audience a greater sense of participation in the epic and a strong affirmation of the wisdom of the marginalized through Sita's appreciation of Kevat. Yet, the popularity of this story in both songs creates a cultural bond that connects different layers of the society. And now I come to the last part. This is about songs about Sita. In making the Ramayana a living text in Gujarat, the power of diverse interpretations, performance, and layerings is perhaps nowhere as evident as in popular songs related to Sita. Sita appears as the central figure in several festive songs, wedding songs, and popular non-devotional songs. In some, the widely prevalent perception of Sita as representing the ideal of a subservient and sacrificing wife is clearly reflected. These songs, upholding patriarchal norms, have popular appeal to a degree. Yet, some of the most popular songs portray Sita as a radically different figure who is confident, assertive, and is not afraid to use emotional pressure as a strategy. This figure is dearly loved by people, especially women who generally sing the songs. I would now like to turn to 3 such songs. The first is a festive and wedding song where Sita and Ram engage in an adorable quarrel. The second is a folk song in which Sita chides Lakshman for not leaving the forest hut when Ram has gone into the forest after the golden deer. And the third is a very popular song in the voice of a Ram devotee who places him way beneath Sita. So let me read from here. I'm sorry, I don't have. The first one. Oh, sorry. The first one is titled Lavinga Keri Lakadiye, and Gujarati people here can read it on the screen as well. Let me start with the English translation. Ram hit Sita with a stick of cloth, and Sita took revenge with a ball of flowers. Sita says, Ram, hurt by your words, I will go around pounding grains at other people's houses. And Ram says, if you do that, I will become your pestle. Then Sita says, Ram, hurt by your words, I will go around grinding at other people's houses. Ram says, if you do that, I will become the grinding mill. Then Sita says, Ram, hurt by your words, I will become a fish in water. Ram says, if you become a fish in water, I will turn into a wave in that water. Then Sita says, Ram, hurt by your words, I will become lightning in the sky. And Ram says, if you become lightning in the sky, I will turn into rain showers. As we see, Sita consistently warns Ram about going away from him if he uses hurtful language. Ram promises to be the bedrock of her work, such as pounding or grinding, or become her support if she turns into a fish or lightning. This song is heard not only during Navratri festival dancing, but invariably during weddings. The bride is often seen in the image of Sita in her beauty and qualities. While there are certainly songs in which she is advised to be obedient and loyal like Sita, in popular songs like this, there is an anticipation of an equal and joyful relationship. Now let me go to the next. Oh, what happened? Oh, what happened? Can you go back? Oh, okay. Yeah, the second one is, yeah, in the second one, Sita chides Lakshman about not going away when Ram has gone after the golden deer, and taunts him. It's a folk song, in which she is fairly harsh, and she says, Ora. No, this is the last one, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. In this one, Sita says, becoming millions of monsters, doubts and fears are sucking my heart's blood. Listen to me, brother-in-law Lakshman. What murderous thing is making you wait? My Ramji is calling out, Sita, Sita. Listen to me, brother-in-law Lakshman. That call pierced through my heart like summons of untimely death. I now see the web of deceit and don't want the golden deer skin. Bad omen early this morning has frightened me to the core. Listen to me, brother-in-law Lakshmanji. My life's companion, a palace dweller with tender feet, wanders around in a thorny forest. As the best of Raghu's moans in pain, his skin has forsaken, becoming so heartless. If you have forgotten your brother, then go ahead and light my fire. Listen to me, brother-in-law Lakshmanji. So, in this song, of course, it is explanatory, but the tone gets sharper as the song advances. And Lakshman would simply not be able to disobey her after hearing this, but his obedience would set into motion the events to come, foreshadowing Sita's trial by fire and her ultimate return to the earth. The anguish expressed here is deep, but the song portrays Sita as a strongly assertive and willful woman who gets her way. And the last one is Ram Tame Sita Jini Tole Na Aavo. This is a very popular song. The other two came from the layer of folk songs. This one is composed and written by a very famous Gujarati lyricist and composer, Avinash Vyas. And here, a devotee of Ram actually places Ram beneath Sita. The song goes, "O Ram, Ram, my own Ram, being an ocean of compassion and epitome of grace, you may get yourself hailed as the Lord. Yet, dear Ram, you come nowhere close to Sita. Indeed, nowhere close to Sita ji. Standing tall in temples with jewelry, you may get worshipped with flowers and sandalwood paste. Yet, dear Ram, you come nowhere close to Sita ji. Indeed, nowhere close to Sita ji. Getting easily misled. How are you the Lord? Whom did you test with trial by fire? Listening to gossip, you abandoned the one who followed you like a shadow and endured pain in forests. What a husband who couldn't see the stature of his wife. And still you are conceited as all-knowing. Dear Ram, you come nowhere near Sita ji. Indeed, nowhere near Sita ji. And finally she says, the devotee says, long before you did, Sita had defeated Ravan in Ashokavan. A lonely woman with demons all around, yet the 10-headed one couldn't triumph there. What is great heroism in killing the dead? In vain, you take pride in your victory. Dear Ram, you come nowhere near Sita ji. This song is not a folk song, but it has the popularity and circulation of folk songs. The lyrics are clear and need no explanation. But what draws attention is how the devotee consistently addresses Ram in endearing terms like my Ram, and at the same time challenges his loyalty, his ability to understand people, and even his heroism, which pale horribly in comparison to Sita's qualities and quiet resistance. Ram is dear, but in all fairness, Sita is greater. It is through layering of songs like this that various sections of the society, I suggest, that the Ramayana has long remained a living text in the cultural landscape of Gujarat. Thank you.
So I was meant to give a bit of a response to this, but our time is very short, so you're very lucky, and I'll just speak for a minute. हिंदी में कहना है कि मेरा कुछ इसका अनुवाद करना था, वो मुझे सौंपा गया था, मगर आप सौभाग्य है क्योंकि हमारा समय बहुत कम है, तो मैं एक घड़ी में कुछ बोल दूंगा. So, I was struck by a few things. One of the things is the uncertainty of meaning and the recreation of the Ramayana. You refer to Paula's work, which really led the way. But in fact, every person is recreating the Ramayana, and this group of women especially are recreating it. And it also is something that Sally talked about, the emotional narrative power of recursion.
Yes, that's what I referred to.
Yes, exactly. And here again, people are doing the same, but in a very personal way, with highly ironic meaning, because the last poem could be read as Nindastuti, which is praise in an opposite way, but it's also ironical. And it is a way of reflecting on a woman's position in life. So it's very, very powerful. One thing I noticed, none of the poems had the theme that Diana mentioned, which is grief, but the genre is different,
Yeah.
I think. Yes. Thank you.
All of us here tonight will be able to attest to the generosity and kindness of the universe to us, insofar as the technical difficulties give us the opportunity to experience the pleasures of recursion and welcome Professor Madoka Fukuoka again. Please join me in welcoming.
Thank you for your introduction. The ancient Indian epic poem Ramayana has been disseminated throughout the large tracts of Southeast Asia since the 9th century. The Ramayana has been disseminated and developed in Southeast Asia, especially in various theatrical forms. Theatrical performance based on the Ramayana, such as puppetry, shadow play, masked dance, and dance drama, have been staged at a variety of events, including rites of passage, rituals related to livelihood, religious ceremonies, royal court ceremonies, and cultural tourism events. Main protagonists of the Ramayana appear before the audience as visualized, tangible, and living beings through these theatrical forms. Experience seeing the performing art forms provides the opportunity to know the protagonist acts as the concrete images. Theatrical performance have been opened to people who have no access to the written texts and people who don't have the literacy to access difficult and elaborate verbal expression. People can know about the right way to live through performance. In regions where the concept of royal authority is dominant, performing art forms have provided opportunities for recognition of the divine rights of the kings. Ramayana theater has thus served as an important platform for the people in Southeast Asia to reflect on the meaning of life. In this presentation, I would also like to introduce some Japanese scholars' research results also. First, I'd like to consider why this story has been performed so often in theater. The story of Ramayana contains many elements well suited to theatrical performance. A Japanese researcher and the translator of Ramayana, Yutaka Iwamoto, pointed out the coexistence of human drama and fairy tale as the characteristic of Valmiki's version of the Ramayana. According to Iwamoto's opinion, the second volume, Ayodhya Kanda, which depicts the power struggle within the royal family, features the elements of human drama, and volume 3, Aranyakanda and beyond, introduce the land of monkeys and land of Rakshasas, and features characters other than humans. This setting, which blends the world of human drama with a fictional world, is well suited to theatrical production. As for the components of the story, it is a classic story depicting battles, adventures, and romance, and the story embodies heroic deeds by virtuous heroes. Various characters, both human and non-human, including demons, monkeys, and animals, appear in the story. These characteristics are key factors in creating visually compelling theatrical production. Also, in the stage direction, it is possible to create plenty of highlights, such as battle scenes and fire lighting scenes. Next, I'd like to consider why this story has spread so widely throughout Southeast Asia. Several notable characteristics inherent in the story contributed to its widespread popularity in many regions of Southeast Asia. The concept of reincarnation of Hindu gods depicted in the story have resonated with the religious diversity of Southeast Asia that includes Islam, Buddhism, localized Hinduism, and various indigenous beliefs. According to the 10th incarnation of Lord Vishnu, the 7th incarnation is considered as Prince Rama, and the 9th is considered as Buddha. In Khmer interpretation in Cambodia, for example, Prince Rama is often portrayed as a bodhisattva himself. Also, the virtuous king's story featuring one single protagonist is compatible with the concept of royal authority in the region where the court culture is dominant. The clear and compelling storyline has been embraced by many people from various cultural backgrounds, and it is possible to create many derivative stories and spin-off works. Because of these characteristics, the Ramayana has developed in various regions in Southeast Asia. The Ramayana has been disseminated as one of the elements of the Indianization of Southeast Asia since the first millennium. Southeast Asia had experienced the Indianization or the history of the acceptance of the Indian cultural influence. Indian cultural influence can be seen as an acceptance of Hinduism or Buddhism, myths of Purana literature, the social structure based on the concept of royal authority, Sanskrit language. As for the influence of language, we can see examples in Indonesian language today, such as sastra, bahasa, dewa, agama, bangsa, and so on. Two epic poems, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, had been disseminated and developed in Southeast Asia. Ramayana has been disseminated in the large tracts of the region as the subject of theatrical performances, also as cultural unifier in Southeast Asia. On the other hand, the Mahabharata has been disseminated and developed mainly in Java and Bali in Indonesia. In Japanese shadow play or rote puppetry, there are hundreds of episodes based on the Mahabharata, and it is said that the total number is difficult to determine when original works are included. The first vernacular translation in Southeast Asia appeared in the 9th century as the Old Japanese Kakawin Ramayana, a translation of the Sanskrit poem Bhatti Kavya, composed by the 7th century Indian poet Bhatti, which itself is a condensed but faithful rendition of Valmiki's version. Kakawin Ramayana can be positioned as the oldest extant literature in Southeast Asia. Because Bhatti Kavya consists of 6 volumes and lacks the 7th volume, the first translation in Old Japanese lacks the 7th volume Uttarakanda. According to the research result by Lorisius and Japanese researcher Aoyama, many versions that narrate the last part of the Ramayana have been translated and created. The first one is the text of the end of the 10th or the early 11th century prose, focusing on the contents of Uttarakanda. It was a translation into Old Japanese. The second one is the text of the 14th century Ravana's life story. It is known as Arjuna Vijaya Kakawin. The third one is the contents of Ravana's birth in the text called Sratkanda or Sratkandanin Ringit Prua that disseminated in the Malay world since the 16th century. The fourth one is the contents of the 18th to 19th century text on Ravana's birth, titled as Lokapala or Lokoporo, by court poet father and son, Yosodipuro the first and Yosodipuro the second. Based on these adaptations and original works, a rich narrative world of Japanese puppetry was established. This is a comparison chart of Valmiki's version of Ramayana and the episodes in Japanese shadow puppetry. I have marked the well-known popular episodes in blue highlighter, such as the battle between monkey brothers Sugriva and Balin, Hanuman as an envoy, Rama's construction of the bridge across the sea, and Sita's fire ordeal, etc. On the other hand, there are many episodes that in the Japanese shadow puppet plays that do not correspond to the structures of Valmiki's version of the Ramayana. These episodes are derived from various literary sources, such as the adaptation and original works mentioned above. I have marked the episodes that do not correspond in yellow highlighter. A Japanese researcher on shadow play, Ryo Matsumoto, noted that there are some episodes that bridge the story world of Ramayana between the story world of Mahabharata. I will mention later about the Romanitis. Introduced in the 9th century and developing since then, the story of the Ramayana has been the theme of various art forms. Since the original text was written in verse, and the translation and the adaptation were also rendered in verse, it was intended to be recited, that is, performed in front of an audience. From these developments, theatrical genres such as shadow play or puppetry, in which storytelling plays a crucial role, have evolved. Furthermore, Ramayana theater has developed in various regions based on a wide range of texts compiled at royal courts and other institutions. Through the representation of in these theatrical forms, the story of the Ramayana or the character's way of living have been considered as a platform for people to reflect on the role models or their own way of life. The main protagonist, Rama, has been depicted as the prince of nobility and virtue. In addition to his virtue as a princely protagonist, Rama also embodies many aspects of masculinity, such as armed strength, intelligence, and elegant appearance. These images of masculinity are complementary to the images of femininity embodied by the heroine, Princess Sita, such as dedication, chastity, delicacy, and beauty. This picture is a scene of the Sayumbara, or the competition to select the husband of Sita. This scene depicting Rama, the victor, and Sita demonstrating devotion to him shows the contrast between the masculinity and femininity embodied by Rama and Sita. One more character who has been mentioned in people's daily lives is Kumbhakarna, the younger brother of the antagonist Ravana. Criticizing the misdeeds of his elder brother, Kumbhakarna took to the battlefield for the sake of his kingdom and was defeated in the battle. In the dance drama in Java, there is a scene where the soul of the defeated Kumbhakarna is welcomed to the heavenly realms, and the scene depicts the purification of his soul of Rakshasa. The concrete image conveyed through theatrical expression make it possible to provide people with vivid impression of human ideals and loyalty. In contemporary world, the Ramayana can be a platform where people consider about the current social situation and the issues in current society. This picture shows the cover page of the pamphlet for the collaborative performance titled ASEAN plus Ramayana in 2017 in Bangkok, Thailand. It was a performance by artists from Southeast Asia and India, and there was the collaborative fight scene with Ravana in the last part of the performance. The source of this information was provided by Japanese researcher of Thai culture, Hideki Hiramatsu. This example shows the position of Ramayana theater as a cultural unifier in Southeast Asia. Thus, we can consider Ramayana theater as a platform where people in Southeast Asia reflect on various issues embodying the tradition of each region and pursuing innovative expression. I would like to focus on the example of Ramayana theater as tourism culture. This is a picture of the performance of Thai masked dance drama Kon. In this theatrical form, many dancers, except the prince or princess, wear masks. The picture shows the Prince Rama's winning the battle. As the picture shows the splendor of the costumes and stage settings, Thai masked dance drama Kom was developed as court culture, and it had been positioned as a representative of high culture. In the performance for the tourist, it is necessary to present it as a performance that is easily accepted by many people while still retaining its luxury. This picture shows the performance of Kecak dance in Bali, Indonesia. Voice performances in Kecak are derived from the traditional trance dance in ritual Sanghyang Dudari. In the 1930s, the German artist Walter Spies had produced a performance of Kecak together with the local people in Bali, adopting the Ramayana story in the performance. The performance of Kecak had developed since then, and it is positioned as one of the prominent performances for tourists in Bali. Because the male vocal performers are likened to the monkey soldiers in the Ramayana, the performances became known as the monkey dance in tourism culture. This picture shows the performance of Sundratari dance drama in Central Java, Indonesia. Sundratari was first performed in 1961 at the Open Theatre in front of the Roro Jonggrang Temple in Prambanan, a famous historical site in Central Java. The genre was created under Vice Admiral Jatikusmo's initiative, who was the Minister of Tourism at that time. Tourists can see a large-scale production at the Open Theatre in front of the famous Hindu temple Prambanan. Theatrical performances in Sundratari focus on presenting the plot of the Ramayana with specific theatrical elements such as dancing, acting, and music, and there are no verbal elements such as dialogues or narrations. From these cases, we can see the local people's initiatives and pursuits to present the optimal performance of Ramayana for larger audiences, including tourists. The book entitled Ramayana Theatre in Contemporary Southeast Asia that I edited in 2023 includes 3 commissioned artworks. The works were created by 3 Indonesian artists. Dance drama created by female impersonator dancer Didik Ninitowo. Animation work based on shadow puppetry by Japanese puppeteer Nanang Ananto Wicaksono, and choral music performance created by composer Ken Steve. Of these 3 works, this one is available on YouTube. Due to the time constraints, I will skip showing the video today, so please check it out on YouTube. Shinta Obon by Ken Stephen. After the publication of the book mentioned above, I consider the organization of the collaborative performance with the artists. I aimed to create an artwork from a perspective that only a researcher can have. As the first result, I collaborated with a puppeteer of Japanese shadow play, Nanang Ananto Wicaksono, and created the work titled Princess Sita Returns to the Earth. The story is based on the episode of Sita's Parityaga and Japanese episode titled Romonidis, or Rama's Reincarnation. The work was based on the 7th volume of the Ramayana, Uttarakanda. In Ayodhya, Sita's chastity was once again called into question. After much deliberation, Rama left Sita behind in the forest. After giving birth to twin sons, Sita returns to the earth. Many researchers pointed out that this part is a kind of redundance because in the sixth volume Uttrakanda, Sita executes the fire ordeal, including the episode. The contents of the Uttrakanda had attracted many people in Java, and the episodes based on the very last part of the Ramayana had been created and developed in Japanese shadow puppetry. In particular, there are some episodes that bridge the story world of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Romanitis, or Rama's reincarnation, can be positioned as one of these episodes. Being disappointed by Sita's return to the earth, Rama looked for the next character for his reincarnation. He then reincarnates to Krishna or Kresna in Mahabharata. In this work, I focused on Sita's point of view and her feelings. As a second result, I collaborated with the same puppeteer again, and the result is the experimental puppet play titled Forbidden Knowledge, Sastrogendro, the secret story of Demon King's birth. It is a work based on the Japanese episode about the birth of Ravana. The story is quite different from the Valmiki's version of Uttarakanda. In the story, Sastrogendro is positioned as the secret knowledge of Japanese mysticism that can transform a Rakshasa to a human being. Ravana's father, Visrava or Vishurava, disclosed this secret knowledge in front of Ravana's mother, Skeshi or Kaikashi, and they were struck by divine retribution. Demon King Ravana was born as a result of the divine retribution. This story was created by a father and son who were court poets in the 18th to 19th century Java, and it reflects the circumstances of Japanese court society at that time when Orthodox Islam was emphasized under colonial rule and critical views towards Japanese mysticism were prevalent. I would like to conclude my presentation. The Ramayana has been the great legacy for the Sanskrit cosmopolis. As Sheldon Pollock pointed out, Sanskrit cosmopolis was not created by the actions of a conquest state. It was made instead by the circulation of traders, literati, religious professionals, and freelance adventurers. The Ramayana has been disseminated in Southeast Asia as a part of the formation of Sanskrit cosmopolis through various translations, adaptations, literary works, reliefs found on ruins, visual arts, and performing arts. It has also been developed as the source of various creative activities until today. Therefore, the Ramayana is not only the past legacy of the Sanskrit cosmopolis, but also as a living tradition that can be the source of innovative creation until today. Through the theatrical forms, many people in Southeast Asia recognize the living Ramayana in their own lives. At the closing of my presentation, I will recite an excerpt of poetry dedicated to Princess Sita, which I wrote in 2024. It is the basic elements of the creative work Princess Sita returns to the earth. I will recite the last two lines in Bahasa Indonesia or Indonesian language and English. Kisah Cinta adalah cerita yang lama yang terjadi di tanah yang jauh. Namun kisah itu adalah cerita kita yang bisa terjadi di sini juga. Sita's story is old tale from a distant land, but it is also the story of us living here and now. Sita's story is old tale from a distant land, but it is also the story of us living here and now. Thank you very much.
So this brings us to the end of our 4 presentations, so please join me in thanking all 4 presentations.
I'm sorry, we had hoped to take some question and answer, but our time is short. So thank you all. This is a beginning. As I said, we are speaking 2 different languages in 2 different communities, but the, the goals are very related. And so I hope you will continue with us on this experimental journey over the coming days. Thank you all. I was riveted by those discussions. Thank you, Charlie. We have some music to end the evening. Our performer will join us shortly.
हम सबको भली भांति ख्याल है कि ये सारा उपक्रम तुलसी जन्मोत्सव के अंतर्गत है, तो यहाँ मानस का गान तो बापू करते ही हैं। तुलसीदास जी की दूसरी एक रचना विनय पत्रिका, उसका पद पार्वती और लक्ष्मी हमें सुनाएगी, अर्थात शैलजा और नीरजा पटेल हमें विनय का पद सुनाएगी।
जय श्री राम बापू, सद्गुरु भगवानના ચરણોમાં પ્રણામ। બંદો ગુરુપદ કંજ કૃપા સિંધુ નર રૂપ હરે। जस गावत गई बहोर को समरथ सुवन समीर को समरथ सुवन समीर को भरोसो 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 जयति सिंहासन आसीन सीता रमण निरखी निर्भर हर्ष नृत्यकारी जयति रामायण श्रवण संजात रोमांच लोचन सजल शिथिल वाणी पद दास तुलसी शरण शूलपाणि शरण शूलपाणि शरण सकल गुण निधानम् वानराणाम् अधीशम् रघुपति प्रियभक्तं वदजातं नमामि साधु साधु सद्गुरु भगवान जिससे राम बापू
दोनों दोनों बेटियों को साधुवाद। गार्गी और तपन पटेल, इनके माँ बाप राम रंग से रंगे हैं और ये दोनों बेटियां भी राम रंग से रंगी हुई है। ध्रुपद गायक चिंतन उपाध्याय से ये ध्रुपद शैली की शास्त्रीय परंपरा आत्मसात कर रही है दोनों बेटियां। हार्दिक शुभेच्छाएं। और इसके साथ ये प्रथम संगोष्ठी यहाँ पर संपन्न होती है। शुभ रात्रि, जय सिया राम।